Have you ever wondered just how deep the rabbit hole goes? Well, you certainly aren't alone. Welcome back to Critical Theories. There are thousands of conspiracies out there. Some of them are crazy, while others are just crazy enough to be true. This is our list of the top 10 craziest conspiracy theories. MK Ultra. First up, we have a conspiracy theory that turned out to be entirely true.
A secret CIA research project.
MK Ultra.
The program was known by its codename, MK Ultra.
A secret CIA program called MK Ultra.
It's not every day that theorists get a win like this one. MK Ultra was a secret project formed by the CIA during the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. Initially designed to develop the perfect truth serum, it quickly became something even more sinister. When the CIA discovered LSD, they began their attempts at chemical mind control. They kidnapped homeless people, runaways, and veterans suffering from PTSD and used them as test subjects. There are even records of members of the CIA itself being used as unwitting and unwilling test subjects. Documented MK Ultra test subjects went on to have continued troubles, and some of them even went on to cause problems of their own. The likes of Charles Manson, the Unabomber, Jim Jones, and Saran are all believed to have been connected to the program at various times. In 1973, the program was officially halted, and the documentation was systematically destroyed. Thankfully, some of the documents were misfiled and resurfaced several years later. It is from these misfiled documents that we gain most of what we know about MK Ultra. And while the official story is that the program has been dead for 50 years, there are those who have their doubts. We can trust the government, right? They would never lie to us. The royal family. Up next, we turn our attention to the British Crown and examine the royal family. The House of Windsor has their fair share of conspiracies that follow them around.
The royal family.
The royal family.
The royal family.
Royal family.
The British royal family.
Rather than trying to pick just one, we'll cheat a little bit and showcase one of our personal favorites. The craziest theory involving the crown is that they are secretly part of the race of lizard people who disguise themselves as humans. These lizard folk have worked themselves into positions of power and authority around the world. What is the most prominent place they have infiltrated? You guessed it, the royal family of the British Empire. Another theory about the House of Windsor is that they have a habit of having people killed off. The most famous incident that supporters of this theory point to is the death of Princess Diana of Wales. The official story is that she died in a tragic accident, but many believe she was murdered. She is far from the only one, however. There is a long list of suspicious deaths and unsolved mysteries that some attribute to the crown, and the suspects extend beyond the House of Windsor to the whole royal line. There are some who believe that Jack the Ripper was a member of the royal family, and that the Queen paid for the evidence to be buried at the time. Conspiracies about the royal family abound, and in an age when the truth is coming to light at an unprecedented rate, perhaps some of them will be proven true. Only time will tell. On to our next topic. The government was spying on John Lennon. We turn our attention once again to a conspiracy that turned out to be 100% factual. The government was spying on John Lennon.
John Lennon.
Of John Lennon. To John Lennon.
John Lennon.
John Lennon murdered in New York.
Whether they had anything to do with his actual death is a debate for another day, but there is absolutely no doubt that they had their eyes on him. John Lennon was one of many celebrities and musicians that had the United States government worried during the 1960s and 70s. Men such as J. Edgar Hoover of the FBI and Senator Joseph McCarthy developed an atmosphere of suspicion and fear amongst government bodies. It was this atmosphere that led to the internal fear of men like Martin Luther King Jr., Fred Hampton, and John Lennon. John Lennon found himself on the FBI's radar after a storied history of anti-war statements and public opinions that some deemed to be anarchistic. In truth, Lennon was a proponent of peace and liberty, but in the Cold War era, any position that was not explicitly pro-American was seen as being pro-Soviet. And so, the United States government began tracking the pop star. They tapped his phones, kept track of where he went and who he interacted with, and developed a sizable file on the man. Some believed his death was associated with MKUltra or otherwise orchestrated by the government. But that's a different rabbit hole altogether. The Robert Kennedy second shooter. Everyone knows that on June 5th, 1968, Saran shot and killed Robert Kennedy at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. Or did he?
Robert Kennedy.
President Kennedy.
Senator Kennedy.
Senator Robert Francis Kennedy.
Was there a second gunman in Robert Kennedy's assassination?
A closer look at the reports and statements of the doctors who attempted to save his life might tell a different story. There is no doubt that Saran approached and shot at Bobby Kennedy, but according to some, the killing blow seems to have come from behind him. There are those who believe that the shot that killed Kennedy was fired from a mere 2 inches behind him. As Saran approached from the front, someone snuck up from behind and made sure the job was done. This theory is corroborated by some who say they saw a group of 2 men and 1 woman making a hasty escape from the hotel seconds after the shots were fired. Acoustics experts also believe that multiple shots can be heard in recordings of the event, making 2 different acoustic signatures appearing one after another. As in the case of his brother's assassination, however, the investigation seems to have been treated with an unusual amount of secrecy by the FBI, and very little is known about their findings in regards to these points of interest. Walt Disney is frozen at Disneyland. Here's a fun one that keeps making the rounds every few years.
Walt Disney.
Walt Disney.
It's a Walt Disney.
Walt Disney died at the age of 65.
Is Walt Disney's body frozen in cryostasis at Disneyland? Many believe it is. Why? Well, let's get into it. The science of preserving bodies in a nitrogen chamber fascinated Disney. The theory had existed for several years before his death, making the rounds among specific papers. The first documented cryogenic preservation occurred 2 years after Disney's death, but the technology technically existed at the time of his demise. As time marched on, the gap between the first cryogenic event and Disney's death appeared smaller and smaller. People started conflating the 2 events, and within 20 years of his passing, the whole world had heard that Walt Disney was being stored under the Pirates of the Caribbean ride in Anaheim. While it's fun to imagine that the creator of Mickey, Donald, and Goofy might one day return, it appears the rumors of having his remains frozen might just be that, rumors. But who knows? Maybe we'll get lucky, and this one will overcome the odds and prove itself to be true one day. Courtney Love had Kurt Cobain killed. The death of Kurt Cobain was a tragic loss in the music scene of the 1990s.
Kurt Cobain.
Kurt Cobain.
Kurt Cobain, the lead singer of the enormously popular rock band Nirvana, is dead.
Officially listed as a suicide, rumors began circulating almost immediately. By 1998, a book was published purporting an alternative set of events leading up to the grunge icon's demise. Who Killed Kurt Cobain? By Ian Halperin and Max Wallace was a bestseller a mere 4 years after his death, and it detailed the theory that Courtney Love had hired someone to kill her husband. In the mid-90s, there had been rumors that Kurt might be leaving Courtney and taking all his Nirvana fame and fortune with him. This was the motive for the supposed murder, but the method of execution has remained a bit of a mystery. It suggested that he was dosed with a lethal amount of heroin, as he was a recovering addict. After his ultimate demise, the events that led to the official story were concocted, hiding the nefarious truth. Whether Courtney Love hired a hitman, or if Cobain was even murdered, remains a point of hot debate. Katy Perry is secretly Benet Ramsey. Turning our attention to another tragedy from the 90s, this one might have a happy ending, or at least we can hope. The death of Benet Ramsey was a shocking and confusing tragedy, remaining unsolved to this day.
Benet Ramsey.
Benet Ramsey.
Benet Ramsey.
Benet Ramsey.
Murder of 6-year-old Benet Ramsey.
Some believe that the reason it's unsolved is that she never died in the first place. There are those who claim that the Ramsey family pivoted away from the pageant scene and into the world of music, and so Benet Ramsey became Katy Perry. Promoters of this theory cite how eerily similar Perry's parents and the Ramseys appear. Katy Perry herself also bears an uncanny resemblance to the young pageant star. They also believe that the family faked the death of their daughter so that they could build new lives and personas. The reason there were so many loose threads and so much conflicting evidence in the murder was to ensure that no one was falsely convicted for the fake crime. Is there any truth behind this one? Probably not. This seems pretty far-fetched. However, when we consider the gruesome alternative, we don't blame anyone who wants to take this one at face value. Elvis is alive. Everyone knows this one. Elvis is alive might be one of the most famous and craziest conspiracies ever concocted.
Elvis Presley's
Elvis Presley book.
Elvis Presley,
Elvis Presley died today.
People around the globe have refused to believe the news of his passing since the moment his death was publicly announced. But if Elvis isn't dead, where is he? And what is he doing? Well, according to theorists, he is everywhere. Sightings of the king of rock and roll have been reported anywhere people know who he was. He's been seen all over the US and Mexico, England, continental Europe, and even Japan. The theory states that he faked his death and escaped into anonymity. The primary reason given for faking his death is usually that he had grown tired of the limelight and wanted to retire in peace. However, this is Elvis Presley we're talking about. There would have been no retiring peacefully. So in order to get his life back, he faked his death and started a new life in his twilight. Why he doesn't seem to have told any of his family remains a mystery, however. The Titanic didn't sink. If we were to ask you what the biggest case of fraud in history was, what would you say? We bet you wouldn't say the sinking of the Titanic, would you?
Titanic.
The Titanic.
Titanic.
Well, according to some, that's exactly what happened. The Titanic had a massive insurance policy on it. The unsinkable ship was covered for an ungodly amount of damage. It also had two nearly identical sister ships, the Britannic and the Olympic. The theory goes that the ship that is known as the Olympic is the actual Titanic. A flaw in the hull of the Olympic was discovered, and an opportunity was realized. If they swapped the names of the two ships, they could capitalize on the hefty insurance settlement that was sure to follow sinking of the ship. Those who support this theory claim that the Olympic and the Titanic both appear to have damage on the space on their hulls where the name is displayed. This damage looks to be the result of an aggressive scrubbing and repainting, as if the names had been swapped out in the last minute. They also claim that several industry giants such as JP Morgan canceled their planned trips on the ill-fated voyage unexpectedly at the last minute. At first glance, this theory seems flimsy, but there might be something to it after all. Stevie Wonder isn't actually blind. Stevie Wonder is a pop culture icon. He is known for his slick music, calm demeanor, and, of course, for being blind. However, there are many who believe he can see a lot more than he claims. Maybe Stevie Wonder isn't blind.
Stevie Wonder.
Stevie Wonder.
Stevie Wonder isn't actually blind.
Perhaps you have heard this one before. Oftentimes, the thought that Stevie Wonder can actually see is used as a joke. To many theorists, however, it is no joke. There are multiple documented occasions where it certainly seems as if Stevie Wonder can see what the people around him are doing. Sometimes he turns his head towards someone who is approaching him. The most common proof put forward is that when people wave at Stevie, he will often wave back as if he can see them. There is also a debate among believers as to just how much Stevie can see. Is he partially blind and able to see some things? Or is he fully sighted? The community is split on this issue, as there seems to be evidence supporting both camps. Regardless of how much he can see, both parties believe wholeheartedly that he can see, and that his blindness is all a scam. His blindness endears him to people, and it makes him more popular than he would have been otherwise. They claim he is faking his disability for clout, which, if he had to fake being blind in order to give the world superstitious, we can't feel like maybe we should overlook this one. So how does our list of the top 10 craziest conspiracy theories stack up against yours? Sound off in the comments and let us know what we missed and what you think belongs here. This has been Critical Theories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.